because I did some pretty stupid stuff in some, pretty interesting places. But so then after 8 years in 2000, in the year 2000, I went back in the Navy, and and then I stayed in the Navy for the next, right up until last year, April last year, I retired.
Now, you've done 20-year plus, um, but in this whole time, you were not the whole time, but you were struggling with alcohol. You were struggling with drugs, like me. Same thing. Trying to push away those feelings. And so, talk to us about 5 or 6 years ago when you had an you almost went through with a suicide. Um, Tell us about that.
Well, so I always kind of, I mean, considering my my life, and my history and my, like all the different stuff, like it wouldn't be surprising, you know, that I would be dealing with depression on some level, right? And but I was just, you know, really good at, fighting through it and pushing through the dark places. And I mean, there were like 8, 9 years, where whenever we would go out to sea, there would be many days when I was like, you know, really like like the thought of throwing myself into the water was fairly close, many days. Um, and it just became, I just got really good at pushing through it and just pushing through it and pushing through it. I mean, honestly, when I was younger, I did a whole lot of acid, a whole lot of acid. And I feel like that, the all those acid trips, um, kind of helped. Not that I would suggest anybody to do acid. That's your, it's something to be considered. But I feel like that, because I would find myself on trips and not really be very comfortable. Like some people do acid and they're like, "Oh, this having fun and it's cool and it's just this fun thing." But for me, it was always kind of a struggle, and so I just I feel like it made my mind really tough. Be able to just like keep focused on what's real, and just But then, like 5 years ago, I I made first class, right? And up till then, I was the second class, and it was like not a big deal. I was a second class, not a lot of leading going on, But when you make first class, they start expecting you to be LPO and start working toward being a chief, and so I made first class. Uh, I was on the Carl Vinson, and so they made me LPO, and I was working for like this really hard. There were some hard people that I was working with in a really weird situation, and uh, and there was this dude that I would go talk to. He was kind of like a resilience counselor, uh, but for the air side, if you know anything about the carriers, the air kind of has their own thing, and the surface, quote unquote, kind of has their thing. But so I'm talking to this guy, and I just, the stress of being LPO and the stress of being away and all the stuff, and the fact that I was already, probably for, at least the last 10 years, I had been just kind of pushing through stuff, and it just got to be too much. And I was like, I don't think I can get back up again. I'm having a hard time getting back up, and I just broke down, and so the guy kind of figured out what was going on, and so he took me to medical, and I was in the protocol for 7 months. They took me out of my division, and I got to work at the library for the next 7 months. And I was in this weird place where I was in the Navy, but not exactly in the Navy. And I would go talk to the the psychologist, and so yeah, that's kind of how I ended up. Um, and I always say that uh, that depression saved me, because up until then I really didn't know what I was supposed to do with my life. And when that happened, I realized that the first thing that I need to do is tell people not to take depression lightly, to share my story, tell them, what happened to me, that, you know, that you could beat it and manage it without being on antidepressants. So I wrote the book, Crack the Depression Code, basically just to tell people my story, and sort of, this is what I did. This is how I think about the mind, and uh, you know, depression and anxiety and things like that.
Now, when you got out of the military after doing over 20 years, a lot of people, when they get out of the military, they really struggle. They struggle with who they are. They struggle with, finding a job. They struggle with finances. What was your transitioning like out of the military?
Well, I had already been, working at this entrepreneurial thing for a while, um, without really any direction, you know. And so when I got out of the Navy, I said, I'm just gonna be an entrepreneur. I'm not gonna try and find a job. I'm just gonna, uh, build this business, radically unstuck, uh, radically unstuck consulting. I'm gonna build this thing into a real business. And so that's what I've been doing, since April.
Okay, so now since April, okay, so now talk to us about when you finally you went through the protocol. How did you start reimagining and rebuilding your life? What were some of the steps that you had to take?
Well, the first thing is that I I decided I was not going to be on antidepressants anymore, because I was facing that. I was facing, like, I was, you know, that I was going to be on antidepressants. That was going to be my life.